Who, if not our loved ones, should we trust in this world? We are raised to believe that our home is a sanctuary, a fortress against the darkness outside. But what happens when the monster doesn't wear a mask? In October 2012, in the quiet, rural heart of Michigan, 24-year-old Rebekah Gay vanished in broad daylight. The investigation would lead to a discovery so depraved it shattered the faith of an entire community. Because the perpetrator wasn't a stranger, it was a man of God, a man they called pastor. Halloween is a holiday of masks meant for playful frights and candy, but for Rebekah Gay, the mask was real, and it was worn every single day by someone she considered family. Before we unravel this terrifying betrayal, please take a moment to support the channel. Subscribe, hit the like button, and stay with us until the end. It helps more than you know. This is the story of a nightmare that began when the sun came up, in a place where everyone thought they were safe. Rebekah Gay was the kind of person who made the world feel a little brighter just by being in it. Born in 1988, she grew up in Midland, Michigan, under the wing of her parents, Thomas and Sally. Her father, Thomas, was a pillar of the community, a man of immense character, a renowned horseman who used his passion to raise money for sick children. He instilled in Rebekah the values of faith, hard work, and compassion. When Thomas fell terminally ill, Rebekah's world fractured, but her spirit didn't. She spent her final high school years in hospice rooms, providing comfort to the man who had given her everything. After he passed, she channeled that grief into a career in beauty. But her true purpose arrived with her son, Connor. Rebekah wasn't just a mother, she was a warrior for her child. Even when her relationship with Connor's father ended, she remained grateful, focused entirely on building a stable, loving life. She moved into the Broomfield Valley trailer park to be near her mother, Sally, seeking the safety of a community where everyone watched out for one another. After Thomas died, the silence in Sally's house was heavy. Seeking connection, she met a man online named John Douglas White. He was 55, a pastor, and seemingly the answer to her prayers. John moved in and immediately became the grandfather figure the family needed. He lived just across the street from Rebekah. He cooked family dinners, he drove little Connor to daycare, and he sat in the front pews of the church where Sally taught Sunday school. Rebekah trusted him implicitly. When John fell ill, she was the one who brought him soup and picked up his medicine. She saw a man of the cloth. She saw a protector. By the fall of 2012, Rebekah was thriving. She had a managerial job, a beautiful son, and a boyfriend, Aaron Quinn, who was secretly planning to propose. Everything was perfect, and Halloween, Rebekah's favorite day, was only hours away. She had decorated her yard with 8 scarecrows and hung fake cobwebs, eager to see Connor's face light up in his Spider-Man costume. She had no idea that the pastor across the street was watching her, waiting for the light to fade. October 31st, 2012. The morning was crisp, the air smelling of fallen leaves. But when the clock struck 8 a.m., Rebekah's managerial chair at the retail store remained empty. By noon, the silence was deafening. Her car, a light blue Buick, was found abandoned in a bar parking lot, hidden among the trees just yards from her home. Inside her trailer, the scene was a chilling contrast to the festive decorations outside. Her favorite purse sat open on the table. No keys, no phone, just an eerie, empty house. Detectives soon noticed a patch of the hallway carpet that had been recently, frantically scrubbed. It was too clean. Then they found the blood mist, microscopic droplets on the kitchen cabinets and the door handle. The seat of her car had been pushed back so far that the petite Rebekah could never have reached the pedals. Someone much larger had driven that car, someone who knew her routine perfectly. The police brought in the men in her life. Aaron, the boyfriend, was devastated. Chad, the father of her child, was cooperative. That left the man who claimed to be the last to hear her voice, Pastor John White. He sat in the interrogation room, a man of God, offering prayers for Rebekah's return. But the detectives couldn't stop looking at his face. John had fresh, deep scratches on his nose and hands, classic defensive wounds. He blamed a falling shelf. He smiled, he prayed, and he lied. But as the sun set on Halloween night, the police were about to uncover John White's dark past, a secret that would prove the devil doesn't always wear horns. Sometimes he wears a collar. As the investigation into Rebekah Gay's disappearance intensified, the police found themselves standing at the doors of the church. Their focus had shifted entirely to Pastor John White, but in the small, tight-knit community of Mount Pleasant, this was seen as sacrilege. To the 24 members of his congregation, John was more than a leader. He was a miracle of redemption. He was a man who had survived a troubled past to find the light of God. Sally Gay, Rebekah's mother, was his fiercest defender. She was the one who had encouraged him to use his minister's license, the one who saw him as the rock of her family. But as detectives began to pull at the threads of John's daily life, the holy man started to unravel. Rumors began to circulate through the trailer park and local businesses. The staff at a nearby bar told a story that didn't fit the pulpit. They described a man who regularly consumed strong liquor, a pastor who spent his mornings in dim booths rather than in prayer. They remembered him being there on Halloween morning, asking about Rebekah with an intensity that felt less like concern and more like obsession. It wasn't just the bar staff who felt the chill. Rebekah's colleagues revealed a heartbreaking truth. Rebekah was terrified of John White. She had confided in them that the man her mother loved made her skin crawl. She felt his eyes on her constantly, not with the gaze of a grandfather, but with the predatory stare of a man who wanted to own her. Her boyfriend, Aaron Quinn, confirmed these fears. He described John as obsessive. John would show up unannounced at Rebekah's workplace. He would visit her daily just to comment on her hair, her clothes, her body. John's own sister later dropped a chilling detail to the police. John had become increasingly bitter about Rebekah's relationship with Aaron. He felt abandoned. In his twisted mind, after all the dinners he'd cooked and the rides he'd given Connor, Rebekah owed him something. He wasn't looking at her as a daughter. He was looking at her as a prize that had been taken away from him. He was a man who felt he had been given a real family, but he was the only one who didn't realize that his role in that family was a lie he had constructed to get closer to his prey. To clear the air, or perhaps to continue his elaborate game of deception, John White agreed to a polygraph test. But the drive to the station turned into a journey through the darkest chapters of his life. Hoping to build rapport, a detective sat John in the front seat of a patrol car and simply let him talk. It was a masterclass in psychological interrogation. Slowly, John began to shed his skin. He admitted he had a criminal record, something no one in Mount Pleasant, not even his fiancée Sally, knew about. He called them mistakes of youth, but the records told a much bloodier story. Detectives discovered that in 1980, a 22-year-old John White had lured a 17-year-old neighbor, Teresa Etherton, into his basement to see a model car track. There, without warning, he stabbed her 15 times and tried to strangle her. She survived, but John served only 2 years. 10 years later, in 1994, the darkness returned. A co-worker and mistress, Vicky Sue Wall, vanished after a tryst in John's truck. When her body was found 6 weeks later, partially naked, her own bra used to end her life. John White was the only suspect. Again, he manipulated the system, pleading to a lesser charge of manslaughter and serving only a fraction of his time. He was a serial predator who had spent his entire life being rehabilitated by a system that refused to see the monster in front of them. He had used the Bible as a shield, hiding his necrophilic fantasies behind the promise of salvation. The polygraph results were a nightmare for John. The machine flagged almost every answer as a lie. Armed with a search warrant, police descended on his truck and trailer. Inside the truck, they found a bag filled with zip ties, heavy-duty construction bags, and a broken necklace, Rebekah's necklace. In his trailer, they found a rubber mallet stained with blood. For 12 hours, John sat in the interrogation room, stone-faced. But then, the detectives changed tactics. They appealed to the only human emotion John had left, his love for Sally. They described the reality of what was happening to Rebekah's body in the ravine. They told him that if he truly loved her mother, he wouldn't let her find her daughter as it decayed remains. John finally broke. He asked for one last call to Sally. Through tears, he told her she was the love of his life, but that she would never want to speak to him again. Then, he hung up and confessed. He told them how he had left the back door of Rebekah's trailer unlocked, how he had waited until 2 a.m., fueled by alcohol and pornographic fantasies, to strike her with the mallet. As she lay dying, her last sight was the man she had trusted as a father figure. He told them how he had watched her die, how he had slept on her couch afterward, and how he had dressed little Connor the next morning as if nothing had happened. Rebekah's body was found exactly where the pastor had dumped it. John White was sentenced to 56 to 85 years in prison. The judge didn't hold back, calling him a man with no place in human society. But John White, a predator who had spent his life terrorizing women, was too cowardly to face his punishment. 4 months later, he took his own life in his prison cell. The case of John Douglas White is a haunting reminder that the most dangerous masks are the ones that look like kindness. Rebekah Gay was a light extinguished by a man who used faith as a weapon. Her story lives on as a warning to us all. Thank you for watching this deep dive into the darkness of betrayal. If you found this story impactful, please subscribe, turn on notifications, and leave a like. It helps us continue to honor the victims and tell their stories. See you in the next one.